A month after the general election, President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed South Africans to announce his cabinet. This new national executive comes after weeks of intense negotiations between the African National Congress and 10 partners. These include the Democratic Alliance and Inkatha Freedom Party. On the 29th of May, voters chose not to give an outright majority to the ANC or any single party, a first in SA's democratic history. So, as the biggest party in the National Assembly, the ANC embarked on a mission to form a government of national unity 30 years after Nelson Mandela's. The agreement allowed for Ramaphosa's re-election as President of the Republic, for the ANC's Toko Didiza to be elected as Speaker of the National Assembly, and for the DA's Annie Lotriet to become her deputy. But what does SA's government of national unity look like, and is it viable? I'm Julien Trévian. You're watching Johannesburg Journal.
My fellow South Africans,
take note of what is happening in South Africa.
The date for the demise of the white minority regime has been determined.
Listen properly.
It's over. It's a fourth Rugby World Cup for South Africa.
With what we have gone through, we can't allow this, Madam Speaker.
Well, let me tell you something.
The ANC is falling even further into the ground.
You are not showing the comrades a way to eat.
Shut up! Shut up!
I want to hear a pin drop.
Less than 2 weeks to come to an agreement before the first sitting of the National Assembly, barely more to form the National Executive. South Africa's divided political class has achieved, in the words of President Ramaphosa, something unprecedented in our country's history. There were many ups and downs along the way, including corrosive letters between the ANC's and the DA's leaderships. Most importantly, the new cabinet has just been sworn in, and it remains to be seen how well parties that have campaigned against each other can now work together. President Ramaphosa assured that ministers' actions would be based upon a set of guiding principles and objectives rather than party interests.
the partnership between the GNU parties is guided by a statement of intent which outlines fundamental principles and a minimum program of priorities. All the parties have made a commitment in writing to respect the Constitution and to promote accountable and transparent governance, evidence-based policies, and decision-making, the professionalization of our public service based on integrity and good governance. The incoming government will prioritize rapid, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth and the creation of a more just society by tackling poverty and inequality, as well as unemployment.
Now, of course, departments were shared based on what each party could bring to the table. As such, the IFP's Velinkosi Hlabisa was offered the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs based on the party's roots in KZN. With its serious handling of the country's finances for the past decades, the ANC retains this department, as well as the departments of police with a new minister, or mineral resources with the indispensable Gwede Mantashe. The Freedom Front Plus and Patriotic Alliance each received one nomination, respectively Correctional Services for Peter Groenewald and Sports, Art and Culture for Gayton McKenzie. The Democratic Alliance notably took basic education, agriculture, home affairs and the environment. With 32 ministers and 43 deputy ministers, this first cabinet of the 7th administration is the biggest since Jacob Zuma, who had nominated 35 ministers in his second term. For comparison, Nelson Mandela's first government only had 27 ministers and 13 deputies. Now, one of the reasons why the GNU negotiations took so long was because of the number of cabinet positions that the DA demanded, 12 compared to the 6 it received. The Blue Party failed to impose the principle of proportional representation based on each party's seats in the National Assembly. But I wanted to see whether the number of ministerial positions was anywhere close to proportional representation and what cabinet could have looked like should this principle have been retained. It appears that the DA would indeed have deserved a bit less than twice the number of ministers that it received, certainly at the expense of the ANC, who took the lion's share of the positions. The IFP, VF+, and PA broadly received the number of nominations they deserved based on their representation in the National Assembly. Smaller parties, however, were not that lucky. The Pan-Africanist Congress and Good Party were granted cabinet positions, even though they have less seats in the National Assembly than the United Democratic Movement, Rise Mzansi, or Al-Jamaah. So, could these arithmetical details stir up tensions in Ramaphosa's government, or even weaken the deal with the DA? Reacting to the cabinet announcement, John Steenhuisen appeared satisfied.
The configuration that we have managed to negotiate ensures that alongside the ANC, the DA is the only other party that is now represented across every one of the clusters in government. This means that, for the very first time ever, the voices of DA voters will be heard in every sector and in every room where decisions are made about our country's future.
But the reports of tensions between the ANC and DA negotiators throughout the week leading to Ramaphosa's address can't just be ignored. The DA wasn't granted several cabinet positions it had asked for, including the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and Helen Zille shared that her party almost walked away. At that point, it became clear that the ANC wished to exclude us from all meaningful involvement in the key economic portfolios. They wanted us in office, but not in power. We were prepared to walk away. And walk away they did in Gauteng after accusing the ANC of negotiating in bad faith. Just like on the national level, no single party received an outright majority in the province, and ANC Premier Panyaza Lesufi this week announced his minority government with the Inkatha Freedom Party, Patriotic Alliance and Rise Mzansi. Remains the threat of an alternate GNU deal. Just days before Ramaphosa's cabinet announcement, Julius Malema's economic freedom fighters offered their participation on the condition that the DA and VF+ be excluded. The Red Berets had met with the ANC on the 30th of June, but these talks haven't led anywhere. South Africa's first government of national unity, led by Nelson Mandela and Frederick de Klerk, only lasted 2 years before the National Party walked away. The context, of course, was way different back then, but it remains to be seen whether this new GNU can resist the rowdiness of politics and time. This takes us to the end of this explainer. Thank you for watching. You can support Johannesburg Journal by subscribing and by liking, commenting and sharing this video. Until next time, Salagachli.